Okay, these are some more problems from summary review number 1, and this is number 4, and we have a complex fraction, and we know that x squared minus 4 factors to be x plus 2 times x minus 2, so we can see that x minus 2 is a factor of the denominator in the complex fraction, the fractional part of the denominator. We can see that this x minus 2 is a factor of this x squared minus 4, so this would be the LCD. So remember, we multiply the top and the bottom by the LCD. Now we can think of these terms as, synonymous. In other words, x plus 2 times x minus 2, x squared minus 4, they're the same thing. So I can use whichever way I desire, which is to my advantage. So if I take a look at this, I multiply the numerator by the x plus 2 times x minus 2, and here the x minus 2's cancel, so I've got x times x plus 2. And then when I multiply this times 1, I'll just think of it as x squared minus 4. So here we're multiplying this to the first term where the x minus 2's cancel, and this is where I just think of this as x squared minus 4 times 1. And the same thing in the bottom, except this is x squared minus 4, so those completely cancel, so it just leaves me with a 3. And then when I multiply this times 1, I get x squared minus 4. So it's a little bit easier way to look at it. And then I multiply everything out and simplify as much as I can. So that's x squared over here plus 2x plus x squared minus 4 all over x squared minus 1. Eventually I'll factor this, see if I can cancel any common factors, but right now I can combine like terms here, so I get 2x squared plus 2x minus 4 all over x squared minus 1. And I see I have a common factor of 2, so I'll factor this 2 out. And I've got 2 times x squared plus x minus 2 all over x squared minus 1. Now I've got a lot more factoring. Big deal, factoring. Okay, so I got a simple trinomial. I need two numbers to multiply to give 2 and differ by 1. That's easy enough. That's just 2 and 1. So this factors to be x plus 2 times x minus 2. And we can always check this out. 2x minus 1x is positive 1x. 2 times negative 1 is negative 2. So I always check them out. And this is x plus 1 times x minus 1. And what cancels? The x minus 1s. This is what we end up with. And remember, we got to put restrictions on our domain. So we can't have a positive 2 or a negative 2, so that makes that 0. And we can't have a positive 1 or a negative 1, because that positive 1 or a negative 1 will make those 0. So those are all the restrictions on my domain. 2, negative 2, 1, negative 1. Okay? So that's step by step. You probably wouldn't do as many steps, but I like to show everything just in case. All right? Okay, number 5. And I did kind of try to combine steps a little bit on this one, and I don't think it's too out of the question here how I did this. So anyway, we have a real good complex fraction here. We got a fraction in the numerator, two fractions in the denominator, and again we want to find out what the LCD is. So we want to make sure that we check this. We don't want to be multiplying it more than we have to. So if I factor this, hopefully I'll get a little lucky. And what I did was I just factored it below because it was a simple trinomial. So that factors to be x minus 3 times x plus 1. And we notice that both of these factors fit into that. So that's actually my LCD. So I multiply the top and the bottom by x minus 3 times x plus 1. I just happened to reverse them there. Okay? And then when I multiply the top, the x plus 1's cancel. So I got 1 times x minus 3 in the numerator. Now look what happens in the bottoms. That cancels. Exactly, so I have just 1, and here the x minus 3's cancel, so I just have 1 times x plus 1. So this looks a lot more complicated than this, but it simplifies real fast, and I end up with just x minus 3 over x plus 2. Real quick fix on that one. We just have to check our restrictions on the domain, so x can't be 3 or negative 1. And then when we simplify this, we also had a 2, so x can't be negative 2. So we can't have a 0 here in this denominator, and we can't have a 0 in this denominator or a 0 in that denominator. So those are the restrictions that take care of that. So check all those denominators. Okay, number 6. Here's another one that looks pretty formidable. And I didn't really have room to kind of skip a step over here, so I had to use an extra step. So what I did was I factored this, and it's a simple trinomial. You can see it's going to be 5 and 3 to get 15, and they differ by 2, so that's going to simplify real nice to be, or that's going to factor to be this simple trinomial, or this simple trinomial, excuse me, factors to be this product of two binomials. Everything else is the same. I just recopied everything, so I just could factor that, and we notice that these are all in there, so that's my LCD. X plus 5 times x minus 3. X minus 3 goes in there, x plus 5 is a factor of that, so that's my LCD. So I multiply the top and the bottom by that. Now you may say, well, gee, this looks like it's complicated, but again, because of the nature, this completely cancels with that denominator, leaves with just 6. And then I've got a negative. The x minus 3 is canceled, and I've got x plus 5. And don't forget the parentheses, because you're going to have this negative sign will affect both these. All right? So I put a parentheses in there as a safety guard, so I don't make an error and forget that second negative sign. And then here the x plus 5's cancel, so I got 1 times x plus 3. And then I've got a little bit more over here because I've got 1 times that. So I use this form, the x squared plus 2x minus 15. So when I multiply this times 1, I get this. And then I simplify all my terms. And I did an extra step. X 6 minus x minus 5 here simplifies to be that. And then I've got an x squared, and then 2x plus x is 3x, and negative 3 and negative 15 is negative 18. So I have this. So by simplifying this numerator and this denominator, we've got this. And then this factors again. 6 times 3 is 18, and they differ by 3, so I'm good to go there. And I can simplify this to be 1 minus x, and this is x plus 6, x minus 3. This simple trinomial factors to be this. Now, I could leave it in this form, but it's nice because this helps me with the restrictions on the domain. Because we can see that x can't be negative 5, it can't be positive 3, because that's going to give me zeros in these denominators. And it cannot be also negative 6, because that's going to give me a 0 there. So those are the restrictions on my domain. X can't be negative 5, 3, or negative 6. And this is my simplified form. I could have left it like this, but for some reason the book that we were using, they like the x in front, so they put the minus sign in front of the whole fraction. So they kind of factored out of both these terms, so they made this a negative 1 and a positive x, and then flipped them. So that's the form that was in the book we use. I took these out of, I believe I took these out of our Blitzer book. Okay, I hope that helps. And again, you can always pause these, take a look at them. And I usually do enough steps, so it should be pretty straightforward.